some shit.
Mm-hmm.
Talk shit, get hit. Snitches get stitches.
Mm-hmm.
Snitches get stitches.
Welcome to episode 28.
Welcome one and welcome all to episode 28.
28
of
Girls Gone Spooky.
Spooky.
What kind of accent could that possibly be?
I don't know.
Spiky.
Like weird Australian mixed with like Dutch. No idea. Spiky.
Mm-hmm.
I feel real spiky. Actually, no. It sounds like Buck Wild. Okay. If anyone here... Was it MTV? Was that MTV?
Yeah, it was MTV.
Our mascot's biting me. Stop it, please. Be a nice boy.
He's going Buck Wild.
He is going Buck Wild. There was a show on MTV called Buck Wild, and the intro was Buck Wild. Woo! Woo! And it was, okay, tragically, one of the main characters, Sean Gandy, a.k.a. Gandy Candy. Because it's Halloween all year round, which honestly tracks with our theme.
Yeah, it does.
We adored him, but he and his uncle died in a mudding accident, which is very tragic, but also
it's fitting for him.
Yeah, I think it was like the exhaust got into the car and it was like monoxide poisoning or something like that.
Yeah.
Super sad, but wow, woo! But they had like, what were they from? Alabama?
I thought it was more like Appalachian, like West Virginia or something.
Okay, yeah, I think you're right. But those accents are distinct.
Yes,
like,
they are. Yeah.
That oi sound, like, I mean, really, like spiky.
Yes. Exactly.
Oh,
it is really distinct.
Okay,
I would rewatch that.
Also, I'm trying to learn a little bit of Portuguese just for shits and giggles. No comment, Amy.
Okay, yep.
But I'm using Duolingo for Spanish. I already speak French. I'm just like, let's just throw Portuguese in the mix. It is the most confusing language from a pronunciation standpoint. I think it's probably how a lot of like ESL speakers feel about English, because it's not consistent. So like, first of all, I is ew, which makes me laugh every time I hear them say it. Ew. But like certain words, like mulher is woman, but then sometimes there's like, it's mulheres, like with a J sound at the end, and I'm like, when and why? Like, and there's no context. It's
like choose your own adventure.
Literally, I'm like, is it because there's a period after it? Like, is it because it's just the word on its own versus with an article? Like, I don't know the rules, and they're not explaining the rules to me. And when you know, like with Spanish, every like the sounds are so consistent. Like it's like, where the emphasis goes because of the accent, and you say all of the letters. This is like, you say most of the letters if you're saying it slowly, but when they start talking fast, it's just like straight over my head. Like, and these are simple phrases like, I drink water. Like, I'm like, come again? Like, it's so brutal. And I think it's just one of those things where you probably have to like develop an ear for it. But I just am like, oh, this is a big yikes. Like, I am bad at this. So.
Oh, well, it's a challenge. That's such a pretty language, though.
It is such a challenge. Well, it's funny you say that, because I was talking to a French-speaking friend, and he was like, it's the ugliest language. And I was like, what? No, but he was like, Portuguese from Portugal, he doesn't find to be pretty, which I don't think I've ever even heard. Like, I think Brazilian Portuguese, I'm sure it sounds different.
Yeah, interesting.
Similar to like Mexican versus Spanish.
Yeah.
But anyway, that just reminded me, spiky. Ew.
Spiky. Interesting. That's
spiky. That means I am spooky in Portuguese / Appalachian.
Perfect crossover.
A wonderful crossover.
Perfect sense.
Total sense. Logical. It's good. We're good.
Like a Brazilian exchange student in West Virginia.
Eu sou
What a culture shock. Oh my God. I can't imagine.
Oh God. That's pretty funny. Yeah, even I am, like the word for am is spelled SOU, and sometimes it sounds like sow, and sometimes it sounds like so, and I'm like, but when and why? He's like, please give me some guidance. Explain it. Because then you're supposed to do these audio recordings, and I'm like, to speak, to try saying it. My palms get sweaty. Like, no one is around. It's tap to speak. No one else is hearing it, and I'm nervous. I'm like,
but if you run out of those hearts, you can't keep going.
No, I am running out of those hearts, let me tell you. Actually, I'm not, which is sort of shocking, but it's just because they give you the answer. It's in front of you somewhere, so you just have to kind of reason it out. But oh my God. Wow. It's rough.
Yeah. Amazing. So anyway, well, good for you.
The Portuguese adventure is not going well.
Well, you'll get there, hopefully.
Yeah, well, we'll see. I may never have to get there, but I'm going to try.
Yeah, it's worth a shot. It's good for your brain.
It's good for my brain. Exactly.
There's of course, in typical fashion, I read the headline, not the article, about that guy who speaks 24 languages. Did you see that?
I didn't read it either.
I watched the video of him like seamlessly going through all these languages. Yeah. It was amazing. But I don't know why, like, what was the point of the article? I think they did a brain scan, maybe. But still, that's incredible.
And he had some very, like, non-academic job. Like, not corporate, he's not, like, a linguist. Well, he's obviously a linguist, but, like, he's, like, I don't know, he did something, like, landscaping or something like that. That was very, like, some kind. Yeah, with your hands. So it's like, Jesus.
Yeah.
It's just brilliant.
Yeah. Amazing. I know.
Yeah.
It was cool.
Wild. So cool.
Maybe I'll read the article one day.
I won't. Let's just be really honest with ourselves. I will not.
If it comes up again, maybe.
Yeah, maybe. Which, now that we've talked about it, it probably will.
Yeah, true. It's listening.
Always listening. Okay, sorry, that was a long tangent about my failed Portuguese journey. Yeah, and also R.I.P. Sean Gandhi. Buck Wild.
Yeah.
Woo. Buck Wild forever. And also Spoiky. Stay Spoiky. Okay, so we're continuing on our journey through haunted cities in the U.S. We will expand out of the U.S. eventually, but for now.
Yes.
Let's see. Should I go first?
Yes, I think you're up.
Okay. So we have talked about the Salem witch trials in the past, but we haven't talked that much about Salem just generally and, like, haunted places there in modern times. So I wanted to talk a little bit about, just, like, briefly skim over the history again, just as a refresher, and then there are a couple locations that I think are interesting.
Okay.
So, for context, colonists first settled Salem in 1626. Roger Conan is credited as the founder of Salem, along with several other nearby communities. He was Puritan and, not so surprisingly, a bit of a violent extremist and opposed any religious differences from other organized groups. This involved resistance to Catholics, Quakers, and other religions, including those rumored to be witches. So Puritanism, as if you've studied American history, you know, is like a very prominent characteristic of Salem and just generally, like, New England at this time in America's history. There were over 200 people accused in the late 1600s during the witchcraft trials. Persecution that was at the time unique to America as opposed to Europe, which was actually more liberal at the time. But only 19 were executed by hanging. So others were executed other ways or died in the tests because, as you probably remember, it was like, if you float, you're a witch, and if you sink, you're human, and just, whatever. So there was a ton of like mass hysteria that just kind of circled all of this. There were two specific religious authors, Joseph Glanville and Minister Cotton Mather, both of whom tried to basically stoke the public's fear of demons and ghosts and talked about witches as working with the devil and giving away their souls. So just lots of really kind of dark shit. Yeah. And the leaders of the settlement were just like kind of really just like sticks in the mud, I would say. So that's a mild way to put it, but I'd say sticks in the mud. Yeah. There were actually rumors of witchcraft villages, they were called, which persisted for years before the trials, especially under Cotton Mather's leadership. He claimed to have seen evidence of witchcraft and curses placed on children, including those of the well-known Mason John Goodwin. Not only were various witches accused, well, witches in quotes, accused of casting spells, but 4 out of 6 Goodwin children began to suffer from strange fits and exhibit bizarre behavior, which is really interesting because it's like there's so many different things that could, like, there's so many different causes for that. Like, one, if there's some, what's that thing? Munchausen by proxy. If it's like maybe he was making them sick intentionally to prove a point. Yeah. 2, the kids were revved up by the whole thing. And because their dad was so involved, started doing it of their own accord. Or 3, my favorite theory, the actual witches were getting punishment on this motherfucker, and we're like, the kids gotta go.
Through the kids.
The kids are first. Ooh. Yeah.
Interesting.
So those are just, please, mind you, like my subjective theories. That is not from anybody else. Making that shit up.
I like it.
So I think that we talked a bit about like Ann Putnam and Sarah Osborne. There was like the girls, there were the young village girls, and this is in the 1690s, who began exhibiting really bizarre behaviors, and they like blamed this like elderly woman as having cursed them as a witch. Did we talk about that? Yeah. I feel like we did.
Was the woman Bridget Bishop? Does it say that? She was the one who was hanged first.
Yeah, the first one to be tried and hung. Yeah, there were others there. So today, some actually speculate that the cause of those weird behaviors may have been poisonous mushrooms. That they had ingested poisonous mushrooms.
The ergot fungus.
Yeah, exactly. And then there were 3 older women, Tituba, who was an enslaved woman from the Caribbean, a homeless woman named Sarah Good, and an elderly woman named Sarah Osborne. Tituba actually admitted to witchcraft, but that confession was likely tortured out of her, which is so heinous. And as soon as she confessed, she began accusing others of the same crime. So that's kind of interesting. But also she was enslaved, so I don't really blame her. Yeah. So hysteria followed from that. Bridget Bishop became the first woman tried and hung. They didn't actually last, just as a reminder, they didn't last as long as I think we think. Like, I always thought the witch trials were like 60 years. Yeah, no, it's not. It was basically by the early 1700s, and this was, 1692 that this started. By the early 1700s, it was done. There are a ton of haunted attractions today in Salem, as you can imagine. So Judge John Hawthorne's name comes up a lot in discussion of the trial, since he was the, quote, hanging judge who sentenced many of the accused to death. William Hawthorne was his father and an early settler of Salem. But so the son was much more vindictive. So William wasn't like a bad dude. It doesn't sound like. His son was the judge, and he was brutal, really vindictive. He never recanted for his role in the trials. He's like one of the few who like never apologized or said like I did something wrong. There is a curse that is reportedly placed on the man present at Sarah Good's execution, Reverend Nicholas Noyes. Ironically, he died of an aneurysm a few years later. Sarah's reputation, however, was eventually cleared of any witchcraft. But here's my thing. So innocent people died, correct? So like these were not witches. If they said quote, admitted they were, it was probably tortured out of them. It was like, you either say you are or you die. And you die either way. So they would admit to it and then were executed. Well, 19 of these people were executed. But I'm not convinced that there wasn't like her saying like, I curse you, I hex you, like just to scare them in her last moments. Like I would probably do that too. I'd be like, yeah, fuck you guys. Like I didn't do shit. You want me to be the monster? I'll be the damn monster. Yeah. If a real witch overheard that and was like, I got you, sis.
Yeah.
And then she's like, aneurysm, you know?
Could be.
Aggressive. Aneurysm. Aggressive. But look, I don't know.
It's
like
a good
with the
theory.
Kids. Right? That's what I'm saying. It's my theory, so of course I think it's good.
It had to have been a coven, right? If there were real witches.
See?
Weren't they in a coven?
Yeah.
Hanging out, doing fun stuff.
Hell yeah.
I mean, remember in our witchcraft episode, that theory from the anthropologist about why the image of a witch on a broomstick came about?
Oh my God. I forgot.
That's what they're doing together out there in the woods.
Ooh, there's some sexually repressed people.
Yeah.
Big yikes.
Yep.
Okay, so John Hawthorne, going back to this guy, there's a lot of curse lore in here. John Hawthorne's grandson, Nathaniel, wrote a novel about, so William was the settler, John was the judge. This is his grandson, Nathaniel. He wrote a book called a novel called The House of Seven Gables that was loosely based on his experiences visiting the haunted house, also called The House of Seven Gables. It was first built in 1668 and was kept alive for 3 generations. Susanna Ingersoll, who was a relative of Nathaniel, inherited the house and eventually turned it into a museum. And Ingersoll's ghost is said to still wander the halls and look out windows at unsuspecting visitors. 100,000 visitors come to the museum every year, with many reporting cold spots and disturbing energy fields coming from the house, in addition to seeing someone in the window. So Nathaniel thought it was haunted. It's clearly still thought to be haunted, even though the ghost who mainly haunts it was the one who turned it into a museum. So who knows? Who knows what spirits are running amok in there?
Interesting.
So the Judge John Hawthorne, he's buried at a cemetery it used to be called Old Burying Point Cemetery, which like, not very creative, guys. And now it's called Charter Street Cemetery. And according to some, Hawthorne's ghost might still roam the area and has appeared in some photos and videos taken near headstones.
Cool.
So I'm gonna try. I came across a couple photos. I want to like take a closer look at them. So maybe I'll post one of those.
Okay.
There's one called The Witch House that I'm going to get to in a little more detail in a moment. So I'm going to skip over that one for now. The Joshua Ward House. It's not connected to the Hawthorne presided trials, but it was another building that was used for witch persecutions. There was a man, Sheriff George Corwin, who was well known for torturing accused witches and lived inside the Joshua Ward House. His nickname was the Strangler.
Like he just lived among the community.
Casual. Like, oh, hey. George the
Yikes.
Strangler's out for coffee. Like, what the
Watch
hell?
out. Protect your
Watch
neck.
out. Hide your kids, hide your wife. He's strangling everybody out here. He interrogated many of the women accused, women and men actually, and brutalized a lot of them into confessing. So like tortured them into confessing that they sold their souls to Satan. His torture methods were in fact legal at the time, but unconscionable to those who knew him. So people were like, not a fan, but it was legal.
Yeah.
He tortured Giles Corey, who was an accused warlock, by crushing him to death with large stones.
Oh, yikes.
Yeah. Some believe Corey might have received his retribution on Corwin from beyond the grave, since Corwin died in the same building years later due to a mysterious blood ailment.
Interesting.
That's kind of odd. And who knows like what other kind of shit he did before he killed him by crushing him with stones. So like bloodletting or something.
Yeah.
Weird. Giles Corey's ghost as well as Corwin still supposedly haunt the site. There's another unnamed, so that's like those are the two main ghosts. There's another female apparition that's been spotted and is believed to have been another victim of Corwin's. There's a very creepy photo of her that was taken by accident by a realtor, and the realtor was like, saw it and was like, hell no. So I'm gonna definitely post that one because it's freaking creepy as hell.
I can't wait to see it.
It's really scary. It's like not super clear, but it's a person. I mean, it's like there's a person standing there. And it's just her. She's all you see. I like really don't want to look at it anymore. It's really creepy. Excuse me. So the spirits inside the building are thought in the Joshua Ward house are actually thought to be potentially physically dangerous because a lot of witnesses have suffered burning scratches or even the feeling of their neck being touched or even strangled from behind. So people get like physically messed with
beat up
in that place. Yeah. There is a haunted hotel called the Hawthorne Hotel, of course, named after William and unfortunately also John. It's a very well-known site for paranormal activity. It doesn't have a connection to the trials. It was built in 1923, but it has a history to hauntings that predate the construction. So the land where the hotel is believed to have been an apple orchard owned by Bridget Bishop. So there's just it's interesting, like maybe she's the one kind of haunting it, or like her energy is just kind of there on that land. To go into that a little further, her ghost is well known in Salem. Accused and executed in 1692, as we know. Many believe that her ghost remained on the land afterward, the same spot where her apple orchard was located. According to the legend, she occupies the Hawthorne Hotel and is commonly seen on the 6th floor, materializing in front of rooms 612 and 325 before quickly disappearing. Many guests also report feelings of uneasiness, mostly in those two rooms, which supposedly have strange plumbing and lighting problems, not to mention disembodied voices that wake people during the night. The last one on this that's actually like kind of sweet is visitors also report curious phantom smells of apples baking from final tribute to Bridget.
That's nice.
So yeah, I kind of liked that one. Yeah. There is a historic district of Salem called Derby, which was once like a red light district for the like port area of Salem. A lot of sex, a lot of drinking happened, like more so when the witch hunts faded. So like during the witch hunts, it was like all focused on religion. You know, everyone was just like, they were like really cracking the whip on the Puritan shit. So after the witch hunts were done, there was just a lot more sex and drinking. And there was also a Shanghai problem there as well. So similar to Savannah.
Interesting.
Yeah, very odd. So there were allegedly a lot of spirits haunt this neighborhood. And there are lots of pirate ghosts specifically who are sometimes reported around the port area.
Spooky.
So kind of interesting. There are some others that I could go into more detail, but it's mainly like restaurants and things like that. So I'm just going to skip over some of those and get a little bit more into the Witch House and the Pickman House. So
okay.
We'll start with Pickman. So the history of the Pickman House is it's located on 43 Charter Street. It was built by Samuel Pickman in 1665, who was a sailor, much like the majority of the population at that time. Once the colony had been established, the town's port attracted a lot of wealthy merchants and mariners. So it's no surprise that many of the early constructions in the area belonged to people in that line of work. So again, lots of sailors. The house was purchased in 1964 by Historic Salem Inc. with the intent to preserve its history and unique architectural style, because similar to like New England style homes, like it had its own distinct look at the time in Salem. And the company began the restoration, but was unable to finish it. So a few years later, in 1969, the property was sold to a man who completed the restoration. In the late 70s, they started doing tours showing off the inside of the property. And according to Debbie Murray, who was a former Pickman House tour guide, each one of the rooms had a button-activated mannequin along with 17th century paraphernalia. So it's just like the mannequins were like historical figures. It was like a historical, it's a historical museum basically. The house was later purchased by the Peabody Essex Museum to conserve the historic significance of the site and has remained under the same ownership. And what's interesting is that the Salem Witch Trial Memorial, which I didn't even know existed, was actually built behind the Pickman House in 1992. So there are markers placed to commemorate all of the people who were executed during the witch craze. And right next door to the Pickman House is the old Burying Point Cemetery, which is where John Hawthorne is buried and allegedly haunts. So those, like the house, the Salem Witch Trial Memorial, and Old Burying Point Cemetery, they all constitute what's known as the Charter Street Historic District. So these are all like historic landmarks now. So there were a bunch of famous people who resided in Pickman House over the years. One was a French painter, Michel Felice Corneille. He was famous, for marine paintings, murals, and portraits. But his most important accomplishment was introducing the tomato to the New World, which I thought was just so cute and funny. Yeah, when he arrived in Salem, he noticed that no one ate them. New Englanders actually thought that the fruit was poisonous. Fruit, vegetable, whatever you think.
Yeah, we know.
We know. Tomato. But he actually had grown up in Italy and was, of course, accustomed to eating tomatoes. And so he would sit on his stoop and just eat them to prove they weren't poisonous.
It was fine. Wow, how funny.
Yeah. So he actually like forever changed New England cuisine.
Yeah. Wow.
It's just so funny. So
it's amazing. Thank goodness for him.
I know, right?
Really good pizza in Boston.
Thank goodness for that. Yeah. Thank goodness for that. So another significant resident was a judge and chief of justice, Benjamin Lind Jr. Although it's been confirmed that Lind lived in the house, they don't actually know when. He's famous for his involvement in the 1770 Boston Massacre trial, after an argument between a British soldier and a wig maker turned into a bloodbath, basically. So a couple famous people who lived there, but it's actually more famous for the dead people who seem to live there than the living ones. It actually has a reputation for being one of the very oldest buildings in Salem, which is really quite cool. So of course it's haunted. It's just old as shit. The origins of the hauntings have been attributed to a lot of gruesome deaths that occurred there for the most part. Many of the stories have been passed down orally from generation to generation and have basically just become like local folklore. So there's, maybe some half truths, maybe full truths, who knows? I'm sure there's some embellishment along the way. But there's one particularly gnarly one that's a murder-suicide that was said to have taken place in the 19th or the 18th century, excuse me. So according to a local legend, a family of 3 had moved into the home, a man, his wife, and his 7-year-old daughter. Shortly after settling in, the man's mental health began to deteriorate, declining each day until he reached the point of insanity. He claimed he could see and hear demons in the home, and in his struggle to fight the evil entities that plagued his existence, he became increasingly irritable. His violent outbursts would horrify his family, each one more jarring than the one before. One day, amid one of his maniacal episodes, he chained his daughter in the attic, deprived of all of the comforts she once enjoyed, as well as the things she obviously needed to survive. She was like defecated, urinated in this same place, was not fed, was alone, was, I'm sure, super scared. She basically was just waiting to die at that point. His wife was terrified. She wanted to protect her daughter, but she was also so scared of her husband, knowing what he was capable of. So she begged her husband to release the child, but, he just didn't care. Eventually, he got tired of his wife bothering him, basically, gathered rope and tied her to a tree in his yard. He made his way to the kitchen. This is really brutal. He made his way to the kitchen where he began to heat a large block of wax. After the wax had come to a rolling boil, he grabbed a cast iron pot and poured it over his restrained wife's head.
Oh, no.
And unfortunately, she did not die quickly. So she was screaming.
Torture, yeah.
And as that was happening, he went back inside the house and hanged himself. Yeah.
Okay.
So although there were actually 3 simultaneous deaths in the house between the man, the wife, the daughter. The spirit of the starving daughter is the one most often seen. While snapping photos of the building, visitors have often captured what looks to be like a young girl staring out of the second floor window. Employees of the museum across the street claim to have heard disembodied voices at night, particularly voices that sound like children. And then just as on top of that, there have been pictures capturing bright orbs, human faces floating inside the house, just weird photos of weird shit.
Yeah.
So that is the dark history of the Pickman house. So next on the list, and actually last one for Salem, and then I have a couple quickies for San Francisco, my home. So the Witch House is located at 310 Essex Street in the McIntyre Historic District of Salem. The Witch House is the only surviving structure with direct ties to Salem's witch trials. The haunts of the house extend past the hysteria, but again, it's the only building still connected to the witch trials. So I have a lot of information here on like architectural history, just because it is like historically architecturally important for the region, but we'll skip past some of that stuff. So the Corwin curse is the first thing here. So from 1684 to 1690, the witch house bore testimony to tragedy. So Jonathan and Elizabeth Corwin had 5 new children, all died young. John, born 1684, died at 9 weeks. Margaret, born 1685, died at 6 months. Anna, born 1687, lived longer than her siblings, but suffered premature death at the age of 19. 2 additional deaths would occur by 1690, with the loss of Jonathan Corwin Jr. by his 3rd month and Herbert by his 8th week. So these kids did not live long. Except for the one daughter who lived to be 19. Jonathan and Elizabeth Corwin continued to inhabit the home until 1717, yet were no longer the heads of household. The witch house was instead overseen by their son, the Reverend George Corwin. His oversight was interrupted by his also untimely death. Fever claimed him in November of 1717, and then his wife in 1718. It also claims Jonathan and Elizabeth. So just a lot of death in this house. Like the whole family basically died in this house. George Jr. and Samuel, a pair of young boys, were all that were left of the Corwin legacy. So Samuel recounted the curse in a later journal, naming death as, quote, that unrelenting evening of mankind, which had made such havoc among his relations. The Corwin estate then collapsed and the witch house remained. So the house stands, their legacy basically died. So the thought was that basically the family was just cursed. So before Corwin finished the witch house, the Davenports laid the foundation. They were a prominent family in 17th century Salem. Richard Davenport was married to Elizabeth Hathorne. And I don't think that's a typo. I don't think she's related to the Hawthorns because it's Hathorne throughout the article. So probably a loose connection. But anyway, they were generally uninvolved in the witch trials. And then, but, you know, they were a part of the building of the house. The Corwin, so Jonathan Corwin supervised the pretrial examinations for the Salem witch trials, which, like, I don't even want to know what that consisted of. Like, no, there was so much sexual abuse happening.
Yes, absolutely.
He was, let's see, twice elected to the Colonial Assembly a decade before this. He was already a leader in the whatever settlement. And so the idea was that, like, Corwins were just generally, like, super intolerant, really suspicious. He, like, followed in the footsteps of his father, and they were just, like, not good dudes.
Not good people.
So they lived there. The witch house underwent a lot of renovation over the years because New Englanders started to adopt the English Georgian style. So there are, like, different architectural details that are meaningless to me, to be honest. So I won't necessarily share them. So who or what haunts the witch house? So those wrongly accused of witchcraft or those caught by the Corwin curse are thought to be suspects. Visitors to the witch house claim to hear disembodied voices. Some feel the chill of an unseen specter. Even Ghost Adventures, shout out Zach Bacon, investigated the witch house during the 19th episode of their 4th season. It holds more than the haunted, however. So inside the wall of the witch house, you will find a black shoe, a superstitious ritual to ward off witches. There are also witch bottles, which are a counter-magical instrument containing urine, hair, pins, and fingernails. Nice decor, guys. Nice decor. The thought was it would protect the house from evil or even catch evil. Urine was thought to attract a witch, and the pins were thought to catch and contain her. So
weird.
Who knows? The witch house also possesses a puppet or a doll used for spell casting or, quote, sympathetic magic. The puppet found in the nearby house of Bridget Bishop may retain residual energy from Salem's witch trials, especially since she was the first executed. So the witch house never actually housed any reported witches. I mean, who knows? Maybe they were. But it bore witness to Salem's witch trials. So the principal resident, Judge Jonathan Corwin, would oversee the execution of 19 accused of witchcraft. So the mason and remodeler, Daniel Andrews, even would face accusations of witchcraft, although he would eventually be acquitted. Like, no one was safe. No one was safe.
Everyone was accused.
Yeah, there was one judge and 12 jurors who apologized for their part in the persecutions, but Corwin never.
Yeah.
So 8 Corwin lives were lost to premature death in the home. It was just tragedy all around and like bad juju, I feel. Just like with like bad people living in there and just like not great. So the witch house remains first and foremost a testament to those affected by the Salem witch trials. While we cannot undo the crimes against them, neither their imprisonments nor their wrongful deaths, we can remember the injustices enacted upon them. This remembrance with hope may prevent us from repeating the 1692 witch hysteria. So that is Salem.
Wow. Interesting. I really want to go there.
Me too. Let's go. We gotta go.
Yeah. We really should.
Yeah, I'm super down.
Yeah, such interesting history. And yeah, I'm descended from Bridget Bishop's husband, which I think I talked about before.
You did. I forgot.
So family ties. We're
family ties. Close. She's a witch.
But I would love to go. Maybe we should go on Halloween sometime.
Let's go. Hell yeah. That'd be so fun.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Okay, we're taking a trip to the West Coast, guys. So these are kind of quick ones. Like SF, I feel like has a lot of, there's not like one big story. It's not like the witch trials, right? It's like little hauntings kind of all over the place. So, I'll just kind of go through the list because I just have a handful of them. So Haskell House, which is at Fort Mason, there are actually dueling politicians who haunt the site. U.S. Senator David Broderick was shot and killed during a duel with State Supreme Court Justice David Terry in 1857. Why a Supreme Court justice is dueling, I don't understand. I mean, State Supreme Court, but still.
Yeah.
And when the military had ownership of Fort Mason, a lot of officers actually reported seeing Broderick's ghost roaming the halls of the Haskell House, which I don't really consider like military men to be superstitious, really. So it kind of surprised me that officers were like, I just saw a ghost.
True.
So then there is the Neptune Society Columbarium, also known as the Harvey Milk Burial Grounds. It's a burial site for loved ones' ashes that are housed within this like actually really beautiful domed building. It's used. It's been used as a burial ground since 1898. So people can go and visit their loved ones' ashes. It's not bodies, but ashes. But there are repeated claims of being touched by a small hand, as well as seeing the ghost of a young girl whose ashes are known to be buried within the building.
Interesting.
Very interesting. Of course, Alcatraz. Many famous or perhaps infamous inmates that were at home in Alcatraz for a time. It's known to give tourists and locals the wig. So visitors have heard voices, clanging doors, footsteps behind them, as well as felt unnaturally cold in the dining hall. Others have reported feelings of dread as they see and smell, quote, the thing. So there's nice. Creepy. There's so much weirdness about Alcatraz because the thing is like, it's a prison, right? And so when you go to tour it, it was, it's not anymore.
Yeah.
But you know that it was a prison at one time. And that automatically gives it like creepy vibes.
Yeah.
It's cold. It's like that scene in Harry Potter where his aunt and uncle take him in the first movie or book, like they take him out to that rocky, isolated.
I know what you're
that's
talking
what
about.
I think of. Like when I first saw that in movie form, I was like, oh my God, it looks like Alcatraz.
I mean, Alcatraz, Azkaban.
Exactly. Hey, it's one and the same. So it looks like that. And it's cold. It's like all cement. Like it's not a cozy place.
Yeah.
So it's cold in the dining hall. I don't know that I felt unnaturally cold, but anyway.
Interesting.
So that's Alcatraz. The Curran Theater, which I have been to many a time. In 1933, there was a robbery there, and a ticket taker, Hulit Tar, was shot and killed. He seems to have stayed in the theater, though, and guests have reported seeing him in the lobby. Others have spotted the ghost of a little girl who is believed to have been killed across the street. I don't know the story of her, but I would want to kick it at the theater too if I was
a fun place to hang out.
Yeah, I'd be like, let's go over there.
Yeah.
Let's blow this popsicle stand. There's a show on tonight. Someone send
exactly
help.
What she sounds like, I'm sure.
Let's blow this popsicle stand. There's a show on tonight. Okay, I'm done. Just someone help. Okay, City Hall apparently is also haunted. City Hall was actually destroyed in the 1906 earthquake and fire that happened right after. And it was rebuilt in 1915, but the new building has actually seen a lot of tragedy and allegedly many hauntings. In 1978, Dan White assassinated Mayor George Moscone and Supervisor Harvey Milk after a dispute, which I think most people know Harvey Milk. Since then, security officers have heard strange noises and seen paranormal activity whenever the hall appears empty. So just creepy vibes after the assassination. The San Francisco Art Institute, built in 1900 near Russian Hill in North Beach, where I used to live. The Institute might have invoked the wrath of upset spirits, as it's said to be built atop an old graveyard. Inside, spooky, you might hear screams, approaching footsteps, or perhaps even see an apparition. Construction workers working on the tower have had their equipment moved or broken, lights turned off on them, and even screamed at to get out. Get out.
I would hate that.
I would haul ass.
I would get out.
I would haul ass out of there. Yeah. This one, I'll end on this one. There are a few others, but actually, no, I have two. One's creepy and one's actually really cute. Golden Gate Park. There are two spirits that are known to haunt Golden Gate Park. The first resides at Stowe Lake with the White Lady, of course. More than 100 years ago, this is sad, a mother was walking around the park with her baby in a stroller. She sat down and began a conversation with another woman. After a while, she realized the stroller was missing and frantically asked if anyone knew where her baby was. It dawned on her that the stroller was in the lake, and she went in after it. Take a walk around Stowe Lake at night, and she might come out of the lake to ask if you've seen her baby, which would scare the living shit out of me to see a woman emerge from Stowe Lake. Like, I would lose my goddamn mind. There are other reports of people getting a ticket from a police officer in Golden Gate Park to find out that the issuing officer hasn't been on duty for many years. He likes to ticket people for traffic violations, but he can't seem to follow you out of the park.
Well,
so that one's kind of cute.
In one place. That is cute.
Exactly. The last cute one, so the Queen Anne Hotel, built in the 1890s, the Mary Lake School for Girls. It was a Victorian mansion, and it's haunted today by one of SF's friendliest ghosts, Mary Lake, who was the headmistress. She was distraught when the school closed due to a lack of resources and funding, and it seems she never truly gave up on her position. Most occurrences are in Lake's room 410, which obviously is now the Queen Anne Hotel, where she might unpack clothing, pick up items that have fallen, and even occasionally tuck guests in when they aren't properly under the covers. Isn't that cute?
That's nice.
Mary, you little cutie.
That is sweet. I think I'd still be freaked out, but that's nice.
Oh, I'd be horrified, but yeah, it is nice. I would be so scared. She's very well-intentioned, but also like, don't touch me when I'm sleeping, or at all. For that matter. Don't touch me. Don't touch me. So
don't touch me.
That is Salem and SF, and I'm passing the mic over to you, my friend.
How cool. So much stuff to talk about. I love it. I love it. Yes. Okay. So I just have one place today, which is Gettysburg, Pennsylvania. But first, actually, I have something that happened to me just yesterday, and I haven't had anything in a while. So I'm pretty, I don't know, kind of excited, kind of freaked out. But so my sister and her boyfriend are trying to buy a house. So I've been going with them to tour houses.
Oh my God.
And
buy a haunted house.
Yeah, I went to one yesterday, and it was a fine house. Like upstairs was nice. I didn't feel anything weird. We went into the basement, which wasn't even fully underground, so it was fairly bright down there. It wasn't like a dark, dank basement or anything.
Right.
But when I got in there, I suddenly felt so heavy. Like there was just some heavy, bad energy down there that it felt like I was trudging through almost.
Oh my God.
And like my arms suddenly felt sore. And the weirdest part was I walked into this one room and I had the overwhelming urge to start crying.
Oh, I don't like that.
Yeah, so there's something like, I guess, sadness down there. Maybe a loved one died down there. Like the basement it had a kitchenette and everything, so like it could have been lived in
like
by
finished.
somebody. Yeah. So we were wondering, like maybe grandma or someone.
Yeah.
It didn't feel bad, but it felt really sad. And I haven't had that sort of experience in a long time. So I don't know how to interpret it, but I did wake up last night at 3 in the morning.
Oh, dude, that just gave me such goosebumps. I don't like
that. So I don't know. It was interesting, but I was like, I don't think you should buy that house because I don't think it's anything evil or anything like that, but still it's
but you
just
don't
heavy
know for sure.
Yikes. Yeah.
And you don't know for sure. Like what if it's something else dark happened in there and it's trying to hide it as something sad, you know? I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't like
could
that.
Be. I know. And I was thinking, like, I cry all the time at the drop of a hat, but usually there's something that triggers it.
Yeah, like a
not
reason.
Like walking into a basement suddenly start crying. But yeah, so that was interesting. I don't know if it was a ghost or some lingering energy, but yikes.
I vote ghost.
Yeah. So we won't be buying that. That's the bottom line.
We won't be buying that house.
We will not.
Yeah. I'm glad.
Okay, so now on to Gettysburg. All right. So the Battle of Gettysburg is its most notorious history. It's often thought to be the most important battle of the American Civil War. And the battle ensued as the Confederacy, so the South, marched to capture Union territory in the North, in Pennsylvania to be precise. And the battle lasted from July 1st through 3rd of 1863 and resulted in over 50,000 casualties over just 2 days. So, unsurprisingly, many people say that the ghosts of these soldiers are still hanging around all over town. And there are a couple of videos that, through what I saw anyway, seem to be the most widely shared that seem to capture ghosts on the battlefield. They're interesting to watch, and I think that that's a relatively common thing that people can capture. But there are also some specific places that are known for their ghosts. So the first one is, it's very active in terms of ghost sightings, and it's called the Sachs Covered Bridge. And during the Battle of Gettysburg, 3 Confederate soldiers who were either deserters or spies, their intentions are unknown, they abandoned their posts and were able to get their hands on some Union uniforms. So they put them on and tried to blend into the Union ranks as they were passing by Sachs Bridge. But they were found out and they were hanged from the bridge. Yeah. And their bodies were left there for who knows how long, but they were left as a warning to any other Confederates who passed by.
That's like snitches get stitches, but
but make it scary.
Make it Civil War era.
Yeah. So they were left there. But nowadays, in addition to being a historical landmark, the Sachs Bridge is a common stop on the many Gettysburg ghost tours you can take, as people often see the apparitions of those 3 hanged men. And there have also been many instances where people feel taps or like grabs on their shoulders when no one is touching them, as well as an inexplicable scent of tobacco that surrounds the bridge. And the guess is that that's the smell of a soldier or a general who's patrolling the bridge while smoking a cigar or cigarette, whatever they smoked back then.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, pretty cool. Okay, then the second ghosty area is called Devil's Den, which is
classic.
a fitting name. Yeah, so Devil's Den is a large natural rock formation on the battlefield that saw some of the worst casualties of the battle on day 2 of the fighting. And presently, it's not uncommon for people to see apparitions there, but the most frequent thing that people report is that technology mysteriously stops working. So when people go with their phones or digital cameras or whatever, try to take pictures, it'll suddenly malfunction. It won't work until they leave, and then it goes back to normal.
Interesting. Which kind of makes sense too, given like in the time there wasn't any technology.
Yeah.
So they're like, get those whippersnappers and their gadgets out of here.
Yep, exactly. And yeah, similarly, ghost hunters who have gone to that area to try to investigate.
Shout out Zach Bagans!
All of their fancy equipment will just stop working and then
I love that.
be normal when they leave. So there's something odd.
That's
and then
cool.
I also read an article from The Guardian. It was written by a reporter who went on several of the ghost tours around there, but they didn't go to Devil's Den, so she stopped there on her way out of town, and she said that she was a few feet away from her car, headed out, went to unlock it, pushed the button from a few feet away, but then as she approached the car, she saw through the window and heard the doors lock again.
Oh, so, no!
It was like, there's just something there, whether it's just an electromagnetic field.
Oh, I don't like that, though.
Something, yeah. So, and this author was a total skeptic, so she, like, tried to explain that away. Like, maybe I pushed the button on accident, but she was like, that swayed me just a little bit on what I thought about ghosts. So
interesting.
Yeah. Very. But Devil's Den has a few other things too. And actually there was a article written in 1939 that was published in the Harrisburg Telegraph. And it told the story of a guy who was driving past Devil's Den when he saw 2 men carrying rifles jogging along the side of the road.
Jogging.
Yeah, like out for a run.
Picturing like Nikes and rifles, like bayonets.
Exactly. They're just out working
Nikes and bayonets, baby.
It's a look.
It's a look.
For some reason, this guy stopped to ask them if everything was okay. Like, I don't think I would have stopped if I saw people running with rifles.
With guns,
Yeah. He did, and he asked them if everything was okay, and they said, no, our friend's really injured. And this guy who had been driving noticed that they were wearing some sort of like military tattered uniform, but he was like, maybe they're just hunters. I don't know.
Okay. So or Civil War reenactors, who knows?
Yeah, I guess that's true. So he got back in his car and rushed into town, went to the nearest gas station, and was like telling the story of what he saw. And the cashier was like, don't bother going back. They're not going to be there when you get back because they were apparitions of Civil War soldiers that people saw in the exact same scenario, in the exact same spot, like all the time.
What?
Yeah. Very cool.
Oh my God, this gas station clerk is like, get out of here.
Yeah.
I get it. There are ghosts. God damn. Shut up about it.
Shut up.
Yeah, buy a Slim Jim and get the fuck out.
Exactly.
Oh,
But
God.
yeah, interesting. I don't know if that still happens, but I guess it happened often enough that they published it in
Curious.
the paper. So
Very curious.
very curious. And then let's see, a couple other Devil's Den things. There are two specific ghosts who have appeared several times there. One is the ghost of a Confederate soldier who is said to have shown up in at least two very similar instances of people who had gotten lost in the area. So he's a nice ghost, and he helped in both of these scenarios, helped these lost people find their way back.
Confederate soldier.
Yeah, and they know that because the people in these scenarios described the exact same look.
Outfit,
And like they could tell by how they described his uniform that he was Confederate. And his other defining feature is that he's not wearing shoes. So he's barefoot. But yeah. And then the other one, this is kind of goofy, but they've nicknamed him Ghost Rider because
Nick Cage.
Yeah, exactly. So Ghost Rider, he just appears out of nowhere. And usually when he shows up, he's accompanied by the sounds of battle, like yelling and gunfire, and then suddenly he's gone. So
Oh my God.
I don't know.
Sorry to interrupt. Our mascot just made a like Halloween black cat pose.
Yeah,
like he was stretching and he was like,
with his bright green eyes.
With his bright green
looks
eyes,
the part.
staring me down. Okay, sorry. Continue.
It's okay. So let's see. Yeah, that's all I had on Devil's Den. But there's a couple more spots. So the third one is the National Homestead Children's Orphanage, which...
Oh, no.
Yeah, this orphanage and this evil lady that ran it
No,
have the same vibes
Not
as the
an
last
evil
episode.
lady.
I know, the Madame Delphine
LaLaurie.
or whatever, LaLaurie,
Yeah.
in New Orleans. So, yeah, yikes. But first, the orphanage, it was opened after so many children lost their fathers in the Battle of Gettysburg.
Yeah.
And maybe their moms had to give them up. I don't know what happened, but they needed a place for these children to go. And the way it was funded is very bittersweet. So a Union soldier named Amos Humiston was killed in battle. And when his body was found, he was clutching a photo of his 3 children.
No.
I know. And the doctor, so his name was Dr. John Bournes, he had been tending to the soldiers, and he took this photo and decided to publish it in a few newspapers in the area in hopes of finding Amos's family. And this story gained momentum, and it was picked up by more newspapers who then purchased the photo from Dr. Bournes. And then finally, when Amos's family was found, Dr. Bournes and Philinda, who is Amos's widow, used the money from the sale of the photo to open the orphanage. So, under Philinda's leadership, this orphanage was a great place. The children were cared for, and they were really involved in the community. But then Philinda remarried, and she left Gettysburg. And the orphanage was left in the care of Rosa Carmichael, who is our evil lady. And pretty much as soon as she took over, rumors were spreading through town that she was mistreating the children. But the last straw was when the children were not present at the Memorial Day parade. And they played a big role in that always because they were the ones to place flowers on the graves of the Union soldiers. So when they weren't there, authorities finally went in to investigate. And upon their investigation, Rosa was arrested for aggravated assault of an orphan in her care, and she was fined $20. But for some reason, she was able to go back and be the matron of the orphanage again, not long after. So after that, the abuse picked up probably because she was angry about having been caught, all that. So it became a daily thing that she would starve the children. She shackled them to the walls of the basement, which they now call a dungeon because that's basically what it was. And she would even strand them in a dirt pit that she dug into the dungeon floor.
Oh,
yeah.
Oh my God.
I know. Evil.
Cruel and unusual.
Yeah. So, just evil woman. So she would leave them in there who knows how long. Very scary, very sad. And so now, not surprisingly, in that basement/dungeon, that's the place that they most frequently will see apparitions of mostly young children. But some people say that Rosa's spirit is also stuck in there. And Zach Bagans, our favorite guy, he went there and he spent the night in the basement. And he was attempting to make contact with the spirit of Rosa Carmichael.
Mm-hmm.
And I watched the recap. And Zach, he is so fun to watch, but he's like such a button pusher that it's kind of annoying. He was in this dirt pit and he was like taunting Rosa, like, come lock me up like one of your little kids and stuff like that. And just be like belittling her, weird. Kind of obnoxious. But yeah, they got some audio recordings that mostly sounded like gibberish to me. But
yeah.
Either way.
It's like that spirit box thing that's like, and then you hear like, and he's like, the children are in the pit. Like, did you hear that? You're like, no, but okay.
Yep, exactly. I think the one he got was, he thought it said, I never killed again, or something like that. And he was like, oh my God, a confession that she killed someone.
But, just so weak. Like, not a single leg to stand on.
Yeah, so he's something else, but he did interview some people, and one person said that he had seen many ghosts of soldiers on the grounds of the orphanage. He lived in Gettysburg, so he had spent time around that area. And then there was another person who visited the home, and he put an audio recorder into that pit in the basement, and he picked up a recording of a child's voice saying, I'm sorry, which is tragic.
Oh, that is so sad.
Yeah. So, bad vibes in there, but you can go visit if you want to and see what happens for you. I don't think I have interest in going in there, but
no,
it's open.
Like, if you thought that basement made you cry, that basement is messy.
Yeah, definitely. So, yeah. Now, the final and less depressing spot is the Jenny Wade house. So, out of all 500,000-ish casualties of the Battle of Gettysburg, only one civilian was killed, and that was Jenny Wade. So she's the unlucky one civilian who died, which is kind of unbelievable when you think about that.
Yeah.
That 50,000 soldiers died and only one person. But anyway, Jenny Wade and her family, they obviously lived in Gettysburg, and their home was dangerously close to the battlefield. So one day, sadly, a stray bullet from battle broke through the kitchen window of the Wade house and killed Jenny as she stood there kneading bread that she was baking for the Union soldiers. There was a second stray bullet that went in through one of the bedroom windows and lodged in a bedpost, narrowly missing Jenny's sister and her 5-day-old baby.
God.
Could have been worse, but Jenny was killed by the bullet. And the story goes that when Jenny's sister found her body, she screamed loud enough that it alerted nearby Union soldiers. And they came in and helped make a makeshift coffin, and they temporarily buried Jenny in the backyard of that home.
Wow.
A few months later, when they were able, Jenny was moved to the church cemetery. But then, just a few months later, she was moved yet again to a third cemetery. So,
why?
Thankfully, the third time was the charm, and she stays in that final resting spot. But that poor thing wasn't really laid to rest until years after her death. So, yeah. But the Wade House, I know, it's now a museum where you can visit the exact spot where Jenny died and still see the bloodstains on the floor of the kitchen.
Lovely.
Yeah, this is another location that Zach Bagans went to when he was in Gettysburg. And they were able to capture more silly recordings and images of what appear to be Jenny Wade. And they were prompted to go there because of how frequently visitors to the museum get pictures of a spirit in there. Usually that are noticed after the fact, like rather than in the moment. So they'll have taken a photo and then look at it later and be like, what is that?
That's weird.
Yeah. So she's more subtle. But I left out one detail of their family because I wanted the rest of this to shine through, but it was in the recap of the episode and I just have to mention it. So the Mr. Wade, the father of the family, he wasn't around much. And when he was abusive and he was a drunk.
Great.
And he would usually just laze around in the basement of the house. And again, in Zach fashion, he went into the basement and tried to provoke Mr. Wade. And for some reason, it shows him crawling around on like the bed that they had set up as the museum set. And he suddenly leaps up and he says, someone just squeezed my ass. So he had a ghost, potentially Mr. Wade, squeeze his butt. And
it being Mr. Wade is even funnier.
Yeah, I know. So,
oh my god, that's good.
That might be an episode worth watching. Just the recap was entertaining.
Yeah. Someone squeezed my ass.
Yeah. Yeah. Classic Zach. But
classic Zach.
The last couple things that are sweet details of her story. So one is that about 20 years after she died, or after Jenny's death, her mother, Mary, was given a pension from the U.S. Army because they deemed that Jenny had been serving the Union at the time of her death because she was baking bread for the soldiers, which was sweet. And the other part of her story is that Jenny, at the time of her death, was engaged to a corporal named Jack Skelly. And they were said to be very in love, etc., but unbeknownst to the Wades, because of how slow-moving news was at that time, Jack had been critically injured about 2 weeks prior to Jenny's death. But she didn't know. Right. And just a few days after Jenny died, Jack also died from his injuries, and he did not know that Jenny had died. So they just happened to die within a few days of each other.
Whoa. And neither had to grieve the other.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So they were like, it gives it a little bit of a Romeo and Juliet, love story kind of vibe. Yeah. So because of that, there's this really weird tradition, rumor, I don't know what to call it, that if you stick your ring finger into the bullet hole that's still in the side of the house, you'll find love or be engaged shortly after.
Okay, why is the first thing I thought of, what if my finger is too chunky?
Maybe just the tip.
Fat fingers, just the tip. That's so funny.
Yeah. So,
that's so sweet.
I know. It's a good ending.
All right, let's go shove our fingers in that hole.
Yeah. That seems really odd to me, but, I'll try it.
It's like kissing the Barney Stone, right?
Yeah, that's true.
It's also weird.
Yeah. True.
Oh my God. Gettysburg had more like interesting details than I thought it would.
Hang on, sorry, I'm malfunctioning again.
Oh, it's not you. Banks
there we
had
go.
his paw on the mute button, so
Okay.
that was me. Sorry. Gettysburg has more interesting details than I thought it would.
Yeah, same. At first, I was like, "This might be really boring," but
no, I mean, I figured there would be like interesting hauntings, but I didn't think that the stories would be as interesting. But I guess the thing like I don't ever really think of is like these like towns were just like towns. Like people were still living there while these wars were ongoing, and I think I just didn't really like. I would think people would just leave, like go stay with relatives if there was a war ongoing. But obviously that's not, I mean, look at Ukraine. Like that's not how it works all the time. Like, you can't leave sometimes.
That's true. Yeah. And especially then, you know, families didn't really leave the area.
Like how would they go? Well, walk.
Right. Yeah.
No, that's so true.
You don't see it coming because it's not like the news is out every day or anything. It's just suddenly upon you. So
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Just getting stray bullets coming to the kitchen while you're baking bread.
Yeah, sad.
That's messed up. That's messed up. Wow, what a haunted history that is.
Truly
haunted AF.
Just the way we like it.
Amazing. Well, more haunted cities coming. Maybe not next week, but we will keep the series going for sure. TBD on next week's topic.
Yeah.
We're getting ahead of recording. I'm sorry last episode was late by a day. Sorry, guys. We're trying to be good about Fridays. Friday. Yeah. And we're going to continue to be good about Friday. But sometimes our schedules just make it a little difficult. So stay spooky, friends. Email us with your stories at girlsgonespooky@gmail.com. Follow us on social at girlsgonespooky. And stay spiky.
Stay spiky. Stay spiky and spooky. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.